They'll have a list of say 20 items that they want to accomplish in their kitchen remodel or their plan for a new house. Prioritize those in order of importance for you, and then have a designer or an expert help you with prioritizing what's practical for your space, because it's really difficult to get all of them in there.
Generally speaking, for an island, you would put the seating on the longest side. But look at the positioning of these stools so that they are not in the way of the busyness of the kitchen. They're sort of put on the external edge of the kitchen.
When you have a typical walkway space in a kitchen, let's say it's anywhere from 36 inches wide to say 4 feet plus in width, but when you have seating there as well, the recommendation is a minimum of 65 inches of space when you have seating as well as a walkway.
If you are deliberating and you are thinking, I don't know, Sarah, should I remove that wall that separates my kitchen from my dining room? I am gonna say absolutely, completely, and totally, yes, 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 this is always a good idea. It's such a game changer. This house is a small 2-story house, and it went from feeling cramped to feeling bright, airy, open, and spacious.
Yeah, that's a really great one. Many times you go into a renovation situation and you need the structural supports where there used to be a wall and you need to leave pillars there to maintain the support of the ceiling or the roof trusses. This is a really great way to introduce an open space and still have the structural support that you need.
Look at what we did here in order to make sure we maximize the flow from the dining room into the kitchen. See this? On the left-hand side, we have cabinetry, so it has tons of storage to service the dining room.
One thought to consider with that, if you're gonna do it with your seating typically for bar height, the tallest, your counter surfaces are around 42 inches tall. If you consider just the part where you're putting the storage that is being used for the dining room, consider raising that even a little taller, 54, maybe even 60 inches tall. That way, when I go to access that storage, I don't have to bend down as much to access that for regular use.
You've heard me talk about a 3-level island. Well, here's a 2-level island, and this was designed with a really important consideration in mind. It has high gloss cabinets, and these are designed to service the dining room.
It actually shows an example of that storage I was just telling you about for the dining room. She's actually got that at a much higher space so that the typical person could access that without having to bend over very far. Really great example of that, Sarah. Try not to have too many mixed patterns in a kitchen space or in one space. So if you're gonna have a really heavily textured and detailed pattern, say backsplash, keep everything else as a supportive element to that. So she showed you that marble with that beautiful movement in it. Everything else in the rest of the space can support that.
Our kitchen is white, 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 and more white. If you're thinking about doing a 2-color option for your kitchen, always think about how to make the most of it. Make sure that you choose 2 colors you love, that you will never get tired of, and that will stand the test of time.
Over 75 or 80 years in the United States, white cabinets have been over 70% of the cabinetry that we've used. And so probably not going to change anytime soon. It's a neutral, so it's really easy for everything else to work around it.
This is an open concept space. This kitchen is in a converted church. So the key here was that because it's a big open space, it really lives like a loft.
If you have a really tall ceilings and you keep your cabinets as though you have an 8-foot ceiling, it will make the cabinet or the kitchen feel dwarfed. So just consider the spatial planning and the proportion of your cabinets to the space you're working within.
This is something that we made using a rolling cart that came from a restaurant supply store. So we married a rolling cart of stainless steel with lockable casters with an in-stock big butcher block counter. And what it created was lots of prep area, huge counter space. No, it doesn't have the sink in it, but you know what? If you're on a budget, that's okay. You don't necessarily need to have services in the island.
If you're not sure about your island use, or if you need access to that floor space for other reasons, big family gatherings, or you just need adaptability for the space, then a mobile island on a cart, great option for doing something like that. Good point, Sarah.
This is why I always say designing a kitchen is like a puzzle, because you have to figure out how you can fit all the pieces of the puzzle together so that your kitchen hums and works the way you want it to.
If you're not doing it for an apartment complex or a rental or an Airbnb, you know, things like that, then I would absolutely be focusing on designing a space that works for you. Eventually, when you go to sell the house, the people who you're gonna have buy that house, they're probably gonna buy it because they like what you have in there as well. They're gonna have similar taste and style.
This was all painted in a shade of Dijon yellow. And I think you should not be afraid to have fun with color in a kitchen. You might say, but will I regret it? I don't know. I don't think you will. I designed this kitchen in 2009. That's 12 years ago. And I think this kitchen is still withstanding the test of time.
I did a kitchen in '07 with I'm going to call it a safflower or a sun yellow, beautiful retro kitchen, looked like something out of the 1910 era. It's approaching 20 years old, looks just as beautiful as day one.
And if you paint part of your kitchen, you can always repaint it if you really want to do something different.
What a library, Sarah, of islands you have to select from on projects that you've done. Guys, she's got to be an amazing resource for something like this. One thing I love that is mentioned here about painting, if your cabinets drive you nuts in your existing space, but you like the layout and you like the way your cabinets are built, painting is a really great way to make it look better.
Don't necessarily just plan to have storage along the front side and the back side. If space permits, you can wrap it around all four sides, and this allows you to tailor what you're storing, where it's most efficient and where it's most effective. Also, something that you will notice in lots of the kitchens I design is that I try and get extra storage underneath the overhang where the stools are. This is where you're putting the stuff that you don't need all the time. This is where I store vases, I store extra candles.
The back of the island is really common nowadays. I see a lot of people in large islands. For some reason, we're going into a trend where people like islands in width very, very wide. And so in order to have enough support for that, you're either going to be putting cabinetry back there, you're going to be putting posts, plenty of counter support, but rather than building it out and making it void space, why not put cabinets there and have it at least some extra storage space when you need it?
Make sure you know what your countertop surface is going to be and make sure it is big enough. This is Organic White by Caesarstone, and it comes in a jumbo slab. But I designed this island to be so jumbo that we almost didn't have enough material to create the kitchen counter. If this island had been an inch bigger, it wouldn't have worked. So just make sure that you triple check the measurements. Make sure that you've chosen your countertop material and make sure it's big enough to suit the size of your cabinetry.
Great thoughts. So not only do you have to deal with the fact of whether or not you have enough material to do a countertop in one slab, if you do have to do more in one slab, you might discuss where the seam goes with your countertop fabricator. I've had clients who are unsure about how the space is going to fill based on what we've designed. So a simple tip, get some cardboard boxes, cut them up, tape them, make them match the size of what was drawn out on the plan and stick them in your space. And then live with it, see how it feels.
Do you see that glint of gold, and are you wondering what that is? Those are actually solid brass panels. And why are they there? Just for fun. I decided to choose these amazing hammered brass pendants, and then I wanted to reinforce that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great. It's interesting when you bring accessories in the kitchen, you get them to interrelate with each other. The light fixtures, the cabinet hardware, and like, what a creative feature piece to throw that brass on the end of the island to create some visual connection between the other pieces, and definitely having that aged feel in that particular design and space really effective at bringing everything together.
For so many years, people shied away from using wood in the kitchen, and it was all painted. One of the most amazing things you can do is when you think about that two-color combination, think about it being a two-material combination. So we have satin matte white for the whole perimeter of this kitchen with white countertops. It just sort of disappears. And then the island. The island is the glamour, the island is the elegance, and this is all done in white oak. And look at how these stools almost camouflage. This is a really great kitchen.
The thing about the two materials I really like, you're keeping it simple. The old KISS method, keep it simple, right? Just a smart move for kitchen design just as well as a lot of other aspects in life.
We decided that instead of 1.5 inches buildup on the kitchen counter, we would go 2.25 inches. And it just gives it a little bit more substance. And then we matched that as the same thickness of the gables that come down that vertical. And what I want you to think about here is how you create those rhythms, those proportions that are the same.
What a beautiful attention to detail, Sarah. That dimension planning takes a lot of attention early and throughout the entire process, not to let it go when you're finalizing the details on your project. One thing when you're doing a thicker countertop, Remember, there's a few aspects in today's kitchens now that a thicker countertop can cause you some possible challenges. If you do a range top, okay, then your cabinetry has to be slightly higher if your range top is going to be sitting flush with your countertops and down on top of your cabinets, okay, versus a cooktop. Same thing with a farmhouse sink sometimes in some designs. Same thing if you have cabinets going down to the countertops in the kitchen. Those cabinets have to accommodate for that difference in countertop height if everything around the kitchen is the same top height. Just plan for the domino effect it has upon the rest of the project.
If you have a long island, how much seating space do you actually need? Do you need the entire length of the island, or can you sneak in some clever storage just underneath that counter? Here what you'll see is we had narrow cabinets. You could make it 12 inches wide or 15 inches wide, but we were able to sneak in some clever wine storage right underneath the countertop here.
Sometimes in the designing phase with my clients, after we've gotten the, let's say, the first 1 or 2 revisions done, I will tell them, okay, now go through and plan what you're gonna put in each of your cabinets, right? Where you're gonna put your lids, where you're gonna put your, your large bowls, and in this case, wine bottles or your spices. Make sure that you generally have an idea that everything's gonna work for what you plan for.
Got a busy household, want a durable surface, trying to think about how best to create that streamlined, minimal, modern styling. Well, this is where the Waterfall countertop comes in. And a Waterfall countertop means that you take your countertop material and it goes across the top and seamlessly waterfalls down and goes from a horizontal to a vertical. This requires a great fabricator and installer to make sure that it is laser precision, gorgeous and beautiful, but look how lovely and elegant this chunky, thick waterfall edge looks.
The funny thing is you think about the form versus function in a kitchen. Obviously the form is beautiful to have a waterfall edge, and that one turned out beautiful, by the way. Just make sure you think about the function of it and what the purpose of that is for you as well. Sometimes the form is the function, by the way. Just make sure that sometimes when you're looking at those things, you're planning out the application and the use. You definitely need focal points in kitchens. That's a part of a form, but something like that can create a visual, attractive focal point to give you something to look at.
When you're designing your island and you're thinking about all the materials, you have to think about how it's going to be seen and where it's going to be seen. It's not necessarily just from a standing perspective. What if you have adjacent seating? That way, when you're sitting down low, you're going to be looking right at that underside.
If you're going to see the underside of your countertop, great point, Sarah. If even the underside of your cabinets, if they're raised up high, plan for any of those spaces that are easy to see, and at least discuss it, right? At least discuss it with your designer, at least plan it out between you and the parties that are making the decision on the project. Sometimes it's not that big of a deal, but other times you definitely would care about how well it looks.
Well, this was a combination of an almost square prep surface for the island, and then attached directly to it was a sunken table. So a built-in table for 4, also almost exactly square. So this is dining and prep all combined together, but not everybody wants to sit at a counter stool. And if you want to sit comfortably in a dining chair that's almost more like a lounge chair, this is a great way to do it.
That seating works really well in that space. It's sometimes, in all honesty, even in a big kitchen, you can have not only an attached counter space for seating with the island, and then have a separate dining as well. So there's a lot of fun ways to incorporate seating, and Sarah's done a great job on this video. When you get a chance, watch the whole video, because it's just flush with different creative ways to show seating in an island application.
We've talked a lot about an island being a different color from the main cabinetry, but what about if you choose to have all the cabinetry the same color and instead change up the countertops? Changing up the countertops is something that I do very frequently. I don't necessarily need the perimeter counters and the island counters to match. I think more is more. And in this case, we took all white cabinetry, and then we had white counters on the perimeter and black counters on the island. And this really stands out. It creates a crisp monolith in the middle of the kitchen. The black counter reinforces the dark floors, it reinforces the dark grout on the backsplash, and this is a solution that really works.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When I first started in cabinetry and kitchen design, which is in 95, 94, almost all projects were the same color cabinets throughout the entire house. Nowadays, it's not unusual to have a project where you have 4 to 6 colors of cabinets throughout the house. We've got a project right now that we've been working on with a client with 10 colors. So definitely don't be afraid to be experimental and try things out, but also don't be afraid to go back to something that was before if it works better for you. Sarah, great video, great advice and ideas, and wow, I'm sure that you homeowners who have a chance to work with Sarah on your projects have a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for the next one.